In May of 1984 at the Monroe Institute, I had been training with Bob for almost 14 months, learning to control my out-of-body experiences. It turns out you can do very specific things with out-of-bodies that you can't do with remote viewing. If you want to know how the trigger mechanism works on a Chinese nuclear weapon, out-of-body's better because you can go to the Chinese nuclear weapon and put your face in it, look around, do detailed drawing. But if you want to know where all the parts from the weapon came from, remote viewing's better because all the parts are intricately linked together. My training officer, Skip Atwater, would come in from the project and test me to see whether or not my remote viewing was getting any better. One of the training tests that he brought was a target that I didn't know anything about. Well, this particular week, he brought a Mars target. I didn't know it was a Mars target. He gave a sealed envelope to Bob Monroe, which inside had a card that said Mars 1 million years BC. He had a list of coordinates. And the first set of coordinates was 44.89 degrees, 9.55 degrees west. I didn't know anything about the targets as I was laying in a dark black cube in the lab, floating on a sea of salt. And the first thing I heard was the coordinates. And this was my response. I got a great view of a pyramid form, sitting in a large depression. It's yellowish ochre colored. I get clouds, a severe storm, major geological trauma. Then I was asked to visit the site before the trauma. They said, go back before the trauma. They said all the dirt had disappeared. There were now smooth walls. Everything was flat, megalithic. I said something about, gee, is this a new pyramid? Did they discover a new pyramid? Because it's really large. Shadow of people, fragments, memory of people. They said, go back to when they were there. Large people, thin and tall, wearing strange clothes, skin tight, very tight, almost can't see them. This is actually the depressed area. This is the pyramid. It's actually a double-layered pyramid. In a canyon looking up steep, high walls that go on forever. Very intricate, huge sections of smooth stone carved out. Getting very large structures. Rabbit warren of huge corridors and rooms. That's a canyon, and that's the pyramid. Now what's really interesting about this particular pyramid, you notice it's sitting on the side of the impact crater. And that's a real trick, because that means the pyramid had to be put there after the impact crater. Because if the impact crater hit after the pyramid was there, it would have destroyed the pyramid. The other interesting thing about this picture is you can measure the shadow of the crater, and based on the angle of the sun, you can estimate the size of the crater wall as being 3,000 meters tall. Now look at the shadow on the pyramid. Pretty tall pyramid. That's a 20,000 meter tall pyramid. Here's something else interesting. That pyramid's even closer to the edge. There's the road in, there's the road out. This is a general area. Pyramid's huge, but different this time. The reason these were different is because they were a cluster. These are like shelters from storms. Designed for sleeping, I specified hibernation, sleeping through savage storms. I'm asked to find out why. They're an ancient people trying to survive. It's past their time and age. They're waiting for the return of someone sent to find a new home. Their world passed through the tail of a comet. I had a sense that their atmosphere was stripped away or destabilized when it passed through the tail of the comet. This is an old fort. Now what's interesting about the old fort, this is actually a pyramid. That's one side, that's the other side, that's the other side. The tip is missing off the top and it's hollow. They call it the old fort. It's always referred to as the old fort. That's a grouping of pyramids. And that's a building, or what's left of a building on a sort of a plateau. And that's the drawing I did of the larger beings. What I think in actuality, there really are no such thing as Martians. What I think Martians are is us. I think we're descendants of the original inhabitants of Mars. And we're the ones that never went back.
When we go to Mars, we're going to continue this search of understanding who we are, where we came from, and what was before us, and may be foretelling of what is the future.